Have you spent a significant amount of time living outside your passport country during your developmental years? Do you come from an expat, military, diplomat, missionary, or international business family background? If so, then this podcast is for you.
Welcome to the TCK Research Podcast, where we discuss the current state of research on third culture kids, cross-culture kids, expat families, and international life in general.
My name is Andrea Schmidt, and I've been an expat for over 30 years, having lived in a total of 9 countries. I'm a coach for TCK girls, and I'm currently completing my master's degree in psychology.
And I'm Mathieu Gagnon, an adult third culture kid who grew up in 6 countries until the age of 15. And I'm now a professor of psychology in Ontario, Canada.
Every episode, we bring you a fascinating conversation with a leading researcher in the field.
If you're listening on YouTube or another platform, please subscribe to our channel. And if you enjoyed this episode, please press the thumbs up or like button, share it on your social media platforms, or send it to a friend.
If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can reach us at tckresearchpod@gmail.com.
Let's jump right in.
Enjoy the podcast.
Today's guest is Dr. Kristin Long, New York State licensed psychoanalyst and creative arts therapist. Dr. Long has a full-time private practice in New York City, working with children, adolescents, families, and adults. She is a faculty member and supervisor at the Institute for Expressive Analysis in New York City, where she teaches classes on the therapeutic use of the body and expressive analysis with children and adolescents. She also teaches projective techniques in the drama therapy department at NYU and is a fellow at the Parkmore Institute, where she received her doctorate in psychoanalytic studies. Dr. Long's interests center around the nonverbal transmission of intergenerational trauma, the importance of attunement within relational dyads, specifically around parent-child treatments, and the incorporation of creative arts into traditional psychotherapy spaces. And today we're talking about her 2020 paper entitled Fractured Stories, Self-Experiences of Third Culture Kids, published in the Journal of Infant, Child, and Adolescent Psychotherapy.
So today we welcome Kristin Long, who we have with us here on our podcast. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hi, Kristin.
So nice to have you with us. We're all excited and to dive into your very unusual paper. But first, can you tell us a little bit about about yourself? And the first question would be, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from New York City. And this is my 30th year living in New York City. And one of the questions I often ask New Yorkers is, how long do you have to live in New York before you're allowed to be a New Yorker?
Right.
And
what is the answer?
Are you allowed?
I've decided that 30 is I am a New Yorker.
You are in 29 was not enough.
29 is fine.
Do you get Do you get like a little hat or a little mini yellow taxi cab figurine? Like, what do you get in your 30 years?
It's a great, we should create something, I think, right? It's a marker. A lot of people leave New York. People tend to come and go, but I've stayed around.
And we will talk about New York as a hub, as it were, but we'll get to that later. Yeah.
30 years is long for expats and TCKs and for anybody who has ever moved around. So congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you're what got you into the TCK and that was not the right question. The question should have been, what are your own TCK or expat experiences? Obviously 30 years in New York, but what else is there?
I loved this question, and I had fun answering it in my head a little bit over the last week or so, because I think I'm actually the opposite of a TCK. I grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, which is about 2 hours from New York City. And I think, and I should have confirmed this before we got on today, but I think I'm the 14th generation on my mother's side, born and raised in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Amazing. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So I've got these roots that just go, way, way, way down.
Wow.
And as a kid, I was fascinated with the new kids who would come in, and I would befriend them. And I wanted to be one. I didn't want to be the kid who, grandmother and great grandmother and great great, as the story goes. So I was
Right.
really fascinated with that idea of people who
Hmm.
could move around and still try to find some sense of community. And so I left as soon as I could.
Of course you did.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Where did you leave to?
So I went to college in Indiana, which honestly felt like another country.
Sure.
The Midwest in the United States was really different than how I grew up. And then I studied abroad in Spain, which I often say felt like less culture shock to me than being in the Midwest. And
Really?
then,
Huh.
yeah,
Interesting.
one thing that I think my family did a lot of once I was in middle school is during the winter break, we stopped doing kind of traditional American Christmas, and we would travel. So we went to Spain, we went to Morocco, we went to Portugal, we went
Hmm.
to Gibraltar, I went to Germany. And, as a kid, I didn't always love missing out. Like that was the biggest
Hmm.
piece for me, like missing out on the New Year's parties. But looking back, it was so exciting. You realize so quickly how big the world is
Yeah.
and that you're never going to see it all.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was exciting to me. And I kind of wanted to try. I wanted to see as much as I could, knowing that I wouldn't ever kind of check them all off.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and then I've been in New York for 30 years. So
Wow. So, but you did see a lot of different cultures, but in the context of trips, in the context of vacations, basically.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
And then
Interesting.
studied abroad. I did a semester in Sevilla in Spain.
Mhm.
And then I had a friend who was teaching in the JET program in Japan. And
Hmm.
I went in between my 2 years of grad school, we did an around the world trip, which was really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, and at the time, this is so unheard of, but at the time, I think it was $1,000 for a plane ticket that you could, as long as you kept going in one direction, you could make 12 stops.
Imagine that.
I
So
think
we
I
just
remember
hit all these
that
great
one.
places. Um,
And I think you had to use it, you had to do that within a certain amount of days, right?
I
A
think
certain amount of days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I, I
Yeah.
think we had
That
two
was the
months or
maximum.
3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Um,
is like around the world in 80 days or something
yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Could be a book about it.
Yeah.
If only. And then I had an opportunity of spending a summer in Nicaragua also, which was really amazing. But most of my experiences around travel, not really, it's so different than actually living,
And
somewhere.
30
Yeah.
years in New York do include a lot of travel still?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we do almost an international trip a year, I would say. And
That's
I'm
wonderful.
always been much more interested in exploring outside the United States.
Mhm.
There are many states I've never seen, and they're not as high on my list as a lot of other countries. That's
Hmm. Hmm. So, so all these experiences,
yeah,
obviously impact us in different ways. Some that are fairly obvious, some that are less obvious.
yeah,
You come to us today with a paper, with a case report about TCKs and how very a creative approach to therapy can be helpful. How do you think? Do you think this background of yours of traveling left and right, that influence your interest, or the fact that you even noticed this clientele existed, let's say?
I think my awareness of TCKs came through less of my personal experience.
Hmm.
My friend who actually was doing the JET program, who we've known each other since we were 5, so
Oh,
longtime
wow.
friend,
You really do have roots.
yes, exactly, exactly.
So many
And
listeners are jealous right now. 30 years, 12
I'm jealous of
generations, 5
them.
years old.
That was 5.
Uh, So she ended up marrying someone in the State Department. So she's actually raising her kids as TCKs. So
Hmm.
she was in DC, which is usually what happens for someone in the State Department in
Yep.
between, right? They come back to Washington, DC. And she was there, and I went to visit her, and she was asking me about work. And I was telling her about a little bit about Reese, which is one of the cases I wrote about. And I said, I felt so much for this kid who was trying to be part of her school culture, trying to get new friends, and was just really struggling. And the more I talked about it, my friend goes, well, she's a TCK,
Right.
right?
Oh,
Right.
It
that's
never. And
interesting.
again, it's fascinating to me. I have years of postmasters, I have my doctorate, and I had never heard of this before. And it
Mm,
seemed like such a disservice to the therapeutic community in New York to not know that this actually existed. And there was already a framework for it that we could start
yeah.
to.
Right.
So that was
Hmm.
exciting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's quite telling that there really is a distinction. And obviously one is not better than the other or more deeper than the other. They're just different ways of different experiences of this idea of global mobility in the context of enjoyment and travel,
Yeah. Yeah.
versus global mobility in the context of living abroad and it's fascinating to me because that's the first time that I'm thinking about these two things separately at the same moment and going, okay, these probably trigger different processes in terms of identity development and all that are quite different. So it's fascinating that even with your vast travel experience, that wasn't something somebody had to even tell you about that. That didn't just kind of, yeah, very interesting.
And that I hadn't read it. I
Hmm.
I really had to look for clinical writing about. There's a lot of educational writing, about
Yes.
education
Yeah.
TCKs. But I didn't find a lot on, just in my background is creative arts therapy and psychoanalysis.
Mm.
Hmm.
And it's amazing. We have a whole an online library of psychoanalytic writing. And at the moment, the last time I checked, my paper was the only one that mentioned TCKs.
Oh,
Really? So that's an untapped because it seems to me the psychoanalytic framework would be particularly interesting to explore the whole psychodynamic where you have your mind is made of parts and
Yes.
there are conflicting interests and so on and that seems to me particularly fruitful as a framework to investigate
Yes.
TCKs. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
mm.
Very cool. Very cool.
thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to talk today about what you um, put out into the world. What you just mentioned is a case report paper, so not a traditional research paper. And you show us how expressive arts therapy using play, creativity, and imagination you used to assist TCK children and adolescents in creating a very cohesive self-narrative. You talk about three kids, one elementary aged boy, and two teen girls aged 13 to 15 years old. Um, we already touched a little bit upon New York and how you got into the TCK world.
Mm.
But you mentioned in the first part that you think that New York is the TCK melting pot. Can you
Um,
tell us a little, how did you come to this realization and why do you think that is?
yeah, I think it comes back into my face whenever I come back to New
Mhm.
York. That you get used to it when you're walking around, and on any given day, part of what I love about living here is you might hear 7, 8 languages on my walk to work.
Yeah, that's
And
cool. Yeah.
I live near Washington Square Park, and I am constantly helping people navigate the city and where to go and which train. And by train I mean subway, not the train, because if
Yeah.
and even that kind of language pieces and how that gets translated in another language. And it's so exciting to me to just be around the level of diversity that we have here. Um, my even I talk about just culturally New York City, and I know there are other worldly places as well, for sure.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But there's something about, I think, just there's permission in New York to not necessarily fit in, which is something else I love. And even what I don't even know what that concept means. But I said we're like the island of misfit toys here. We are just, thrown together, kind of going like, all right, well, this works, okay. And that's so exciting to me. I find it actually it's home, right? It's very comforting. Yeah.
Hmm. Do you think so do you think this attracts TCKs to New York? Is that what would you
Ooh, I
yeah?
do. And that was some of the reflection I had once my friend Janine introduced me to this, I came back and I started to think about my practice. And what was really interesting to me was all the adult TCKs that I had
Mm-hmm.
over the years that I've worked with who never even I self-identified in that way,
Right.
right? They never said
Hmm.
this is part of my identity, this is part of who I am. And now what I notice is, if I share my paper at a class I teach at NYU, almost every semester, one student will come up to me and say,
Oh, cool.
that's me.
Cool.
That's and I love that moment. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad. And then we'll start to share some resources, and they'll say, oh, did you know? Did you know? I'm like, I didn't know. So there's a hesitation in it in writing about something that is not part of your own identity. I think we want to be, or
Hmm.
at least I did. I wanted to be really mindful of that,
Yeah.
um, and not. Which I think is why it wasn't so research based. I really wanted to make it much more of a story and honor their
Hmm.
story
Hmm.
instead of adding my meaning to it necessarily,
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
background is so
Yeah.
different. That's not worry. But I had this
Yeah.
moment, and I think this was kind of a fun story where, whenever I'm writing a paper, I will read it out loud to my wife multiple times, and she'll give me
Right.
feedback. We'll go back and forth, and we play with it. And I'm reading this to her, and all of a sudden we stop and we look at each other, and she's a TCK.
Oh,
Oh,
And
plot twist.
had never she's the youngest of four kids, grew up in the Philippines,
oh,
she's a white kid, white family,
Right.
and her brother speaks Tagalog, and they had never heard of this before.
oh
So
my gosh. Yeah,
Fascinating.
had
that's
great conversations with her family, and it
That's so
also
cool.
it helped the two of us too, because we have these moments where I'm just like, and
amazing.
now she's like, I'm a TCK. I don't know about that,
Nice. That's
She used this as an excuse and you as a blame.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't do dishes. I'm a TCK.
Right, exactly. It
Not sure
helps.
that's how that works. Hmm.
I'll tell her. I'll tell her you said that.
That's very interesting. Wow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah, isn't that fascinating? So it seems, I mean, if one were to be poetic about it, it seems like almost the universe wanted you to know about TCKs.
Yeah, right? From
I think
different sides.
so. I think
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah.
it's just, and again, my neighbors, like in New York, they're just everywhere you turn. Yeah,
So
Yeah,
you
well,
you
it's been my
basically
experience as
label
well.
everybody now. Sorry.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, it's been my experience as well that once you start talking about this, there's
Yeah.
always somebody who either is one or knows somebody who is one or cares for somebody who was one or has a family member or oh my dad or it's a
yeah,
really it's a good kind of social lubricant as a conversation piece. It just gets people
yeah,
talking.
yes,
What I
Yeah,
find often is like then you mention something, then you see them thinking. You go like,
yeah.
and then you go like, hmm, yeah.
and the connections start, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
wait, yeah.
Yeah. So Andrea was talking about the framework that you use this expressive arts therapy where you use creativity and imagination, and she mentioned that one of the goals is to help clients clients or patients. I'm never sure what the correct terminology is, but develop or work a more cohesive self-narrative. So I want to ask you, as a clinician, what do you see being the main struggles that TCK children face and
Mhm.
also that TCK adults face? What does that look like when we talk about this cohesive self-narrative?
Yeah. I think part of what I loved about specifically my psychoanalytic training was that the pathology is much less interesting than curiosity,
Hmm.
and really stay with a stance of being curious. And so for me, that was kind of how I approached a lot of the TCKs that I've worked with, is not looking for the problem, not assuming that there's a pathology or something that needs to get fixed or even changed. I think that's up to them, really.
Yep.
But how to, and what you had said earlier also really touched me, just around trying to make meaning of your childhood too, right? Of
Yeah.
how to take these parts that maybe didn't get expressed or didn't get put into language. Or the experience that I have a lot is it got put into language, but it wasn't your language, right? It was your
Right.
parents' language or a secondary language. And even then those narratives got fragmented, which, from I work with a lens of attunement a lot in the city. I worked with Beatrice Beebe, who's a attachment specialist.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and she helped me so much. Just think about that. She does parent-infant work along that dyad of what happens when that relationship isn't feeling secure. Okay.
Hmm.
And, I also, which was kind of interesting, I work with the deaf population too. And in some ways, I feel like they're almost TCKs in their own right.
Well,
Um,
they are. There's yeah, there is they're being recognized more and more as a we're recognizing that some children of deaf parents go from a deaf culture at home to a hearing culture at school and so on. Yes. So you're right on the money about that. Yeah. Hmm.
I have I worked as a deaf rehab therapist for a while. So one of the things that I started to notice in my work with Beatrice was that, hearing parents who had deaf children, that there's that disconnect got started unless the parents decided to also learn, in the States, we have American Sign Language, right? The
Yeah.
ASL. And if that became the shared language of a family, a secure attachment could develop so much faster.
Oh,
Right?
interesting.
Right, because
Interesting.
there's
Yeah.
a shared language. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if not, then again, I think that the disconnect between parents and children just starts growing. And my priority when I do family work always, and I talk to parents about this hopefully in ways that connect with them, is I want your relationship with your child and your child's relationship with you to be the most important thing.
Mm, mm,
Because if they have
Mhm.
that solid foundation, almost anything else is possible, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so
Hmm.
how can we get that connection? And so what I was noticing with a lot of the TCKs that I worked with is that they didn't always feel connected to their parents. And then because I come from a background, drama therapy is my creative arts modality that I was trained in.
Hmm.
I really wanted to think about how could I use that with these families to start to do even story work, you know?
mm,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's the story of your childhood? And what's the story of your childhood? And what's the story of your
Hmm.
family?
Yeah,
And
it's a
how,
very creative process. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. And you mentioned two concepts that I think are worth just shedding light on for listeners. You talked about the psychoanalytic framework and you talked about attunement. Could you give us a quick definition of those two, just so nobody's left behind in terms of understanding of the basic
Sure.
psychological concepts?
So with psychoanalysis, there's so many different schools of thought, but my training was more object relations and relational, which really
Okay.
focused again on the dyad between a therapist and their patient or their client.
Hmm.
And how can that relationship promote healing? And I think about it, my job is almost of filling in the gaps that a lot of people had pretty good parents, or even the good enough concept is Winnicott's, right?
Yes. Good enough
Um,
parenting. Yeah.
and yet, no one's perfect. So there were moments where I said, your parents just didn't quite get it. They kind of just missed the mark. And to me, that's part of what we can do in therapy is we can almost go back and try to fill in those gaps. So that's the way I think about psychoanalysis is it's depth work. It's usually
Okay.
longer term, which I like because I'm a relationship person. So I like to be with my patients for a long time.
Hmm.
And it's really about making meaning of someone's life. Again, not about fixing, changing, or even, finding out what your diagnosis is. That could be part of it, but it's
Yeah.
really more about how can I make meaning about my experiences. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the psychoanalysis piece. And attunement is such a huge part of that for me. And it's a little different than mirroring. Sometimes people think of it as mirroring, and mirroring is doing the same, right? Mirroring is, if I'm scratching my head, you're going to scratch your head, and we'll scratch our heads together. That's great.
Mm.
Yeah.
But in parenting, what we see happen a lot is it's more of a stepping into someone else's experience. And I always go back to the idea of like, when you just feel like someone gets you, like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
got it. That's the attunement piece. It's a lot of times
Ah,
it's
understood. Yeah.
nonverbal, right? So even what you're doing with me right now, the nodding, right? That's a
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
cross-modal attunement. And it shows me like, okay, you got me. So I can keep going with this train of thought because you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Very
And that's
interesting.
the attunement that we want to have within a family system so that everyone feels connected and secure.
Mm. Mm.
Perfect. Good. Thank you for describing those. Very
Sure.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we go a little bit more into your therapeutic approach, which
Yeah.
you already said you base on playing creativity.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
so here we go again back to your origins.
Great.
What attracted you to this approach in the
Yeah.
first place? And then how do you think this is especially helpful for TCKs? You already mentioned it, that it's often for non-expressed feelings, emotions.
Yeah.
Can you get a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah. I'll try. Yeah. I think my background was I did a lot of theater as a kid and a young adult. And I didn't do musical theater. I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer. I really loved the story,
Mm-hmm.
and the story told through narrative work.
Mm-hmm.
And so in some ways I love theater, but I really, really love drama. And the drama is more of the rehearsal, right? And it's more of the play and it's more the scripting. The theater is the experience as an audience when you get to witness something and see a play. But the dramatic play for me, um, it's a trying on of identities. Like, oh, I'm going to see what it feels like to be a nurse for a while. Oh, that's really fun.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to step into this role or I'm going to step into that role. And in my work with kids, even before I was a clinician, I worked as a camp counselor and I worked in the school for a while. And I just saw that when kids were given space and permission to do fantasy play, they figured things out.
Isn't that
They
interesting?
just figured
Yeah.
it out. And they also
Mm-hmm.
learned how to negotiate. They did the turn taking, the back and forth, even conflict. And it's funny. I often say, parents want to step in, or even teachers or educators, they want to step in really quickly when there's conflict. At least in the States, I feel like that's a big thing on the playground. Like, oh no, 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 no. You're like, no, no, let it play out a little bit. If everyone's safe and it's just that the volume of voices are getting raised a little bit,
Right.
let's see what happens. And
Mm.
most
Yeah.
of the time, kids work it out. And
Mm.
I'm not saying that they don't need adults to step in. Of course, that's
Of
part of our
course.
job.
Yeah.
But there's so much negotiating that they can do, and they just do it innately. It's natural and it's universal. Play is
Fascinating.
universal.
And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, they need to try things out. Does it work? Does it not work?
Yeah. What is it like to say yes? And what is it like to actually, I'm going to refuse to talk for a while.
Yeah. And some might argue that for a while, that's pretty much all that kids are doing.
Yeah,
They're playing.
learning to say no
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
to parents.
They're
Yes.
constantly playing, I'll be this, I'll be that, we'll play this, we'll play that. And yeah.
That's right. And I think as adults, then we let that go at some point. It's not as socially acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And so the families that I work with, what I see a lot of the time, and I really try to have so much empathy for this, is the parents who forget to play.
Yeah.
They forgot, they don't remember how to do that, and then they forget that their child actually needs it, and so it becomes
Right.
so much. And again, there's the reality to this is not lost on me. Well, you have to brush your teeth and then you have to get your homework done, and you have to eat dinner and be nice to your brother and say goodnight. And I will often ask families, how do you play together?
Hmm.
And yeah.
Blank stares. Yeah. Play
Yes,
together. Yeah.
I don't know is one of the best answers that you can give me in therapy, because it means we get to figure it out together, right? And
Yeah.
again, we can go from that place of curiosity. right? So if you don't know how you play together, let's find new ways to do it. Let's figure that out. Because your kid needs it. I just remind parents of that. And they need to play with you. Like you're their primary and they're, often their first playmate.
Yeah.
And they want that time with you.
Yeah. And you know what? Growing up abroad, being in an expat family, you're very often the only playmate.
Yes.
Yes. For at least for periods of time during transitions. So yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And across transitions, you're the stable playmate.
Yes.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And how you share, I think I go back to again, like the importance of a shared narrative within a family system, with a language difference, or, if in the case of split families or divorced families, you have this experience over here, this one over here, or even with extended family. I see this a lot with the TCKs that I work with. They'll come and they'll spend time with extended family. And like, oh, so-and-so's 80th birthday party, that was so much fun. Oh, no, we missed it. We were in Gibraltar. Like, oh, okay. And that gets lost too. And just, I think the internet has changed that in some really beautiful ways, honestly. But still, it's different from being embodied together.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so what is the idea? The idea is that this play and this kind of ability to try on different identities and to try things out is useful for your TCK clients in what specific sense would you think?
Yeah, I even think, that there's room, and I'm thinking of play. I'm going to extend it not just from dramatic play, but also to arts-based play.
Yeah.
There's so many ways to have transitional objects moving from place to place. And I really encourage families, well, what's the story of our life when we lived here? And let's actually concretize that. Let's concretize it through pictures, through images, through stories, through the menu from the restaurant that we went to on Tuesday nights. Like let's create that, and then let's take that with us when we come here, and let's start it again. That I think that kind of creativity, it creates a shared experience within a family system too that might not have been there before. And sometimes
I want to get into your cases. I can't wait to talk about the altered book. But
yes. We'll get into that. But it's almost like you're talking about play in the service of attachment, in a sense.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Play as a vehicle to attach more to your family and so on. Yeah.
Yes. And to stay attached, right? To stay. So I'm taking your language and extending it a little bit to, and how do you play with family members that live, 7,000 miles away? How do you do that? I even have kids who will do journals that you exchange within your family. So I'll write a couple pages,
cool.
mail it to someone else. They'll mail it to someone else.
Such a cool idea. Wow.
That continuity, I think. And it's also, who gets real mail anymore? That's just fun.
That's true. Snail mail, as one of my friends calls it.
Snail mail. Exactly. Yeah.
So let's indulge Andrea and get into the cases. But before we do, I want to point out to the listeners that the contribution of this paper is different than the other papers we've had on the show, in the sense that you don't bring like a sample of 300 TCKs or 50 TCKs that you question and you got data from. Your contribution is more of a case report. So you're letting us know about, I would assume, what you consider to be prototypical or typical cases, or that represent what it means to be a TCK in therapy, and specifically in with a therapeutical approach that's play-based and expression-based and so on. And so you report three cases, and in which you use this expressive arts approach with young TCK clients. I would say they're relatively young. So let's go through them one by one, so listeners and viewers can get a sense of the underlying issues, first of all, that these clients were consulting you for, or that their parents were having them consult you for. and the way in which they were able to you were able to use play and creativity with them to benefit them. So I believe the first case is of a young teenager you labeled Reese. So tell us about this case. Tell us about Reese.
Oh. Well, Reese was the one who introduced me to TCKs.
Oh,
So
cool.
Reese will always be right here with me.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids that I work with kind of, I always say they kind of move in and hang out for a little while. So in
Yeah.
some ways, maybe I get to be home too. And
Shout out to Reese for sure.
yes, my goodness.
And to Reese's parents.
And Reese's parents. That's right. Um, I think in New York, at least, therapy is pretty common, so even with kids and teenagers that so a lot of kids will self-select coming to therapy, which I don't know if that's the case elsewhere. But a lot of the teenagers I work with, especially, and it's not always gendered, but a lot of teenage girls will request wanting to come to therapy. And
Interesting. Hmm.
yeah, so Reese was one of those, and I kind of in my head, Reese, when I met her, was very much an old soul, and I think that I would almost connect that with a lot of TCKs, just that
Mhm.
when you have these experiences that are so worldly, it is almost as if you've lived all these different lives,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so that was my experience with her right away. She just had this sophistication to her. Um, and she was poised and self-assured in her body, and so didn't really come in with a problem necessarily, but didn't feel accepted, didn't feel like she fit in at her school. And in New York, again, we have the UNIS school, which is the UN school, which is right by the UN in New York City. So a lot of
Yeah.
TCKs are there. That's not where Reese went to school. But so I think a lot of, especially private schools in the city, tend to do a pretty good job of trying to integrate new kids when they are enrolled. But for whatever reason, she just didn't click. Um, and one of the stories I remember, her talking about was just that I think she had grown up learning British English, and had said something at some point like, either about her jumper or something.
Yeah,
And of
yeah.
course, in American kids, for a jumper, I'm not even sure what that would mean. Like
What that
maybe
would be, yeah.
like a jumpsuit or something,
Right.
but it's a sweatshirt, right? It's just a sweatshirt. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, and just that moment for her, and again, such a small moment, right? So going back to attunement, it was a moment of
Ah,
shame for
yes.
her, really.
Yes. Of
You know,
misattunement right
yeah, it
there.
was a
Yeah.
misattunement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And she was having so many of those that she really started to feel fragmented. And, in the paper, I have two of her drawings there. Of her, her self-portraits. You can see they're a little bit off the page. They're not centered, they're not grounded. And again, in psychoanalysis and in creative arts therapy, when we work with kids or anyone's artwork, our job isn't to interpret it. I don't know. I'm not the expert on anyone else's artwork, and just like I'm not the expert on anyone else's personhood.
Yeah.
I I get to come along for the ride, like that's the fun part. And so what I can do though is just give back what I see, in these moments. And so with Reese, really what I kept giving back was um, that she just didn't seem like she felt cohesive, that she didn't feel like these parts of her had come together. And maybe that's not always the goal, I don't know. But for her, at least in her teenage years, she still felt like part of her was kind of over there and another part of her was over here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
she didn't feel grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. And if I go really down to the fundamentals, it seems that in a sense, what you're saying is she didn't feel secure. Because how can you feel secure if you're not grounded? Like
Yeah,
your basic embodied level of security, like things are okay, things are stable, things are secure, right?
that's right. And I don't want, and I hope my paper doesn't, like all TCKs don't feel secure. Like it's
No, yeah.
where, like we
Talk
can't
about
make statements like that at all.
Hmm.
But I think, the ones that again kind of self-select to come to therapy, there's a part of them that just knows, right? They know that that they need help kind of coming up with that narrative, coming up or adding language to their experience so that they can start to formulate it in a different kind of way and start to feel more secure and contained.
Mm-hmm. So what did the play aspect look like with Reese? What did she,
Yeah.
how did she
Yeah.
make sense of this?
Yeah. Well, what I remember when she came in was definitely, this kind of, again, kind of poised, I'm a like, hey, let's sit on the ground kind of person. And
Yeah.
she like, of course, sat in the chair. And so it took, I brought out some art materials, and I usually give kind of like the tour of this is actually my office.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give a little bit, we have an art table over here. There's a lot of like stuff on the shelf. And I'll just kind of say like, look, we can talk. Like talking is such a great tool in therapy. We can also explore things in so many different kinds of ways, and we can also do combinations of them. So she definitely can, and she needed a lot from me in the beginning. So
Yeah.
as articulate as she was, and so educated and like smart, 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 she didn't know how to talk about her own experience.
And
Yeah.
how old was she when
Yeah.
she came to you? Sorry.
Think around 15 or so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
by the way, even without the TCK piece, 15-year-old young woman, you
Yes.
know,
Yes. Yes.
15-year-old anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's where I need everyone else's research. I do need like those 300 TCKs all in one space to go like,
Yeah,
is this a
yeah.
universal adolescent thing?
Yeah.
Is the TCK piece just like an added component?
I
Yeah.
think it's a component in itself, but it certainly sits on top of,
Yeah. It's the top layer.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I finally got Reese. I remember I finally got her to actually sit on the floor with me. And I had like big like drawing mats that have a little bit of weight to them. So I just kind of plopped them on the floor. I brought some artwork out, and I think art material is so important that with a 15-year-old, I'm not bringing out the Crayola crayons. Like I have like really beautiful art pencils that come in different shades, and I always make sure that they're sharp, and I have like a professional art eraser that I have. I really want the importance and like the holding, like you are so important, that we're going to make sure that all these supplies and all these pieces
Yeah.
are
These
here for
tools.
you in case
Yeah.
you want the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah.
going to work. I did inpatient psych in the city for a long time, and it was something that was so frustrating for me, is just nothing about that space said get better or
Right.
heal. It's like,
Hmm.
here's a bunch of markers, the caps are off, they're probably dried out, but have fun coloring. Yeah.
Fun.
Use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really try to do the opposite of that when I'm
Cool.
introduced art materials to this space. And she just started, kind of looking around, and then picked up something and just started drawing. And the two pictures in the paper are the first two that she did. And then, my prompt is, I didn't have a prompt for her artwork, but afterwards, it was just like, so tell me about your artwork. And that's when she started. She's like, well, you know, I only drew my face. I don't really know where the rest of my body is.
Interesting. That's really metaphorically, that's enormous. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I resonate with that very much so. That's
Yeah.
fascinating. That embodied piece of
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I know it's here, but
Yeah.
it's also like exploded all over the place.
Yeah.
Wow. Very
And
cool.
to get there, of course, like there's certain kids who come in and I could say, so tell me about yourself. And they'll say, oh, I don't know where my body is. Like, and haha, you know what I mean by that? I actually mean like, or we can
Yeah.
get to it metaphorically. And
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
kids who don't either have access to that parts of themselves or the language to describe it yet, that's where I think the creativity is just so beautiful. We don't
Yeah.
have to know where we're going. I don't know where we're going. I never know where we're going. Like, just come on in and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
So for her, a big part of it was visual
Yeah.
drawing and so on. Interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And really didn't allow herself to be too childlike. That was definitely
Her
not,
drawings look very sophisticated.
yeah.
Already, right?
Yeah.
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 Very beautiful, but sort of
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, exactly.
And
And I
here.
think the one that I didn't put in there is the one that has all these hands. Like she actually drew one that just had like hands
Oh,
overlapping.
yes, you were telling us about this in paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that picture, again, like if we just look at it from a psychology space, right? From that mindset, you look at it, it's easy to kind of go, oh, psychotic, right? I can appreciate how someone might do that. And I think we do people a disservice when we make that assumption
Agree.
because
Yeah.
this was actually there's nothing psychotic about it. And if you ask, right, tell me about your picture, it's not psychotic at all. That's not the process that she's having. It really was representing all these hands around the world who can reach out to her and she can reach out to.
Mm.
Hmm.
What a
Hmm.
beautiful picture you're painting. Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
So
was really, yeah.
that was Reese. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask a little bit more because just to give her the credit, she created her own magazine, right?
Oh, so again, I don't know if this is
Right.
just a thing in the States, but we call them zines.
Yes.
So short for
Zines.
magazine.
Oh, that, yeah.
Yeah. And they're handmade. I don't have kind of you fold a bunch of paper, staple them
Oh, yeah.
together,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you draw, and then we used to photocopy them. I don't know if they now just print out 600 of them or something. But yeah, she would photocopy them and started to pass them out. And they were so, again, just like these clever stories about what she was doing in college or a friend that she had met or just, just an adventure, the adventure of.
Yeah.
And that little turtle on the back, that's what got when
Mila,
when
right?
she sent one to me. Yeah, yeah. So
Hmm.
I love that piece too. Yeah, the turtle piece. Um,
So the magazine happened at towards the end of the
Yeah, she did that. She didn't create them with me in the office. That was kind of her own takeaway afterwards. Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating because you
that
you
is
you might
fascinating.
you might ask that does the process end at the when she passes the door of your office out,
Right.
and the answer in this case is heck no. You
Right.
didn't even talk about a magazine in the context of therapy.
And I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think that's some of the goal is right to internalize your therapist and
Yeah.
and take them with you, right? That we get to
Yeah.
kind of hang out together, even outside of the space. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
But I mean,
Very
what a
cool.
from not wanting to sit on the floor, basically drawing, very structured drawing to handing out your personal magazine.
It,
Wonderful.
the play, right? The play kind of expanded
Yeah.
in that
Yeah,
Yeah.
way.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And
Very
and
much
and
so.
became more free for her.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's Reese. Good job, Reese. A model.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now we come to the project that I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole
Oh,
online.
good.
Altered books. Oh my goodness. What is
Altered books. Yeah.
Yeah.
and tell us about Mila and Altered Books, please.
Yes. So Mila, I kind of laugh already when I think because it's by cheeky is the word that came like there's something that was so cheeky about her. In like a lovely way. Like to me, those are
Yeah.
I love working with the kids that, every other clinician in the city is like, well, they're really difficult. So I was like, oh, bring it on, come
Bring it
on.
over.
Um, and it's funny, I'm trying to I was not like that as a kid, so I think there's something about that permission. Like, how did you get to be like that? That's so
Right.
fun. It's so fun.
Because you're
Um,
12th generation.
exactly. My roots were too
14,
deep.
14.
Uh,
Um, so I think a big part of, my work with her was really around um finding ways for that part of her that was, the part of her that was a little spicy, a little cheeky, to find a way, for her to let that part of her shine without getting in trouble.
yep.
And that was a hard balance for her
Like,
because, she's the one
structured
who,
trouble.
I think she was caught smoking at school and was like, yeah, and I would tell her teachers, when they reach out to me for kind of some thoughts about how to help her out in school, I was like, look, don't get into the ring with her. Like if you get into the ring with her, you're like losing. Don't even.
I already like this girl.
She's like so smart, so
Yeah,
smart. And also, she was one, if it feels okay to talk about just a little bit of the self-harm that she was doing some self-harm behavior. And I'm not going to get too into that at all, but
of course. Yeah,
to me, it really represented her struggle to regulate emotionally.
Yeah.
yeah,
She was not a kid she was so full of life. Like the libido of this kid was like strong. Like I did not worry about a lot of times with that. There's a concern about possible suicidality. That's not what was happening. And I often think that's not the case. And it certainly wasn't the case with her. I think she really she overwhelmed herself.
right.
And then I think her own life experiences she found to be really overwhelming. Um, and I think the story with her that stands out so much, and then we'll get into the share a bit more about the altered books. It's just, her parents were also divorced, and this was I never heard of this. It was so fascinating. So her parents lived in neighboring countries in Europe, but so in the States, it's like you go to Brooklyn, like, because your dad lives in Brooklyn, and then like you
Yeah,
go to the West Side for, to be with your other parent, like
yeah,
that, like you don't cross country lines.
yeah,
You
yeah,
go,
yeah,
sometimes maybe New Jersey, maybe, but
yeah.
so even that, I was like, wow, so here's this kid who just, I think 15 homes she had, in the time by the time I saw her. And not with the same parents. So again, that fragmentation around a narrative, her parents didn't have the same memories that she had because they weren't with her most of the time. So all of this just started
Yeah.
to, she was the holder and she had to collect them all.
Mm.
And that's a lot for a kid. It's a lot to be like the
Hmm.
keeper of those stories. So, um, in the story that I think I have it in the article was, waking up after a nightmare and kind of hitting the wall. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, 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 yes,
Mm.
yes.
And, she,
Because she wasn't sure which home she was in. Is that it? That's how I interpreted.
she
She
went to
woke up
town
at
at
night and
night.
she didn't
Tricky,
know what
right?
home she was in. So she would
Yeah.
smash against the wall. Yeah.
She was trying to turn on a light switch, and which was here, in a home somewhere else. And
Yeah. Oh,
it took
wow.
her a while, and then she's like, "Oh, right, the light's over there. Let me go turn on the
Yeah.
light." Yeah, and
Yeah.
I cannot. And again, I think I had two homes growing up. Like my parents moved maybe when I was in sixth grade or something. And I remember like that week of just like, where am I? Like, what's going
Right.
on? You know,
Right.
and for her to have that moment at a time of fear and not know how, the effort to soothe yourself, put the light on, couldn't even
Yeah.
get that,
Yeah.
that didn't work out for her.
Mm.
Um, and so she's like I always thought of her as like a tough marshmallow, it's like, you gotta work really hard. And once you got in there, I was like, oh, there's so much mush in there. You just gotta work for it. And
Stuffed marshmallow.
and I think that was really, and there's a defense to that too. And I would say
Oh
like
yeah.
defenses help us survive, right? So we don't want to
Yeah.
just get rid of them. Like they're actually there and part of our psychological makeup to get us through things, to help us be resilient.
Mm.
And so those defenses that she had were really important. But in therapy, I'm like, let's see if we can kind of maybe you don't need that one anymore. Maybe you don't need it here. Um, and so, I have a closet that just has a bunch of art supplies. And I find a lot of the older kids that I work with, the younger ones usually want something that's a little more structured or with more direction, or, here's some materials. Let's see what we create from it. The older kids just like to open up the closet. Okay, what are we going to do? And
Yeah.
that's what she did. And I have a series of old books for people who want to do some altered books. And she started paging through them and she's like, what are these? Why do you have these? Great question. So I started to tell her about it and she's like, oh, that's what I want to do right away. She just, and then I think that the picture that I have in the article, um, with the X-Acto knife moment, like that one to me also really stands out of the
Yes.
sublimation and helping her find a way to express these parts of herself or even these needs that she had in a way. And, I hate to say, the only phrase that's coming to mind is like, that's more socially acceptable. And I'm like, I don't even know like whose society, like what
Mhm,
measure, I don't
mhm.
know what that is, but but again, that wouldn't get her into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she was really, really invested in this altered book. And I'm curious, Andrea, what you found about it actually, if you looked online or in
Found all these beautiful pictures, a lot of cutouts, a lot of
yeah,
it's they seem to me like treasure boxes, like
yeah,
you close it and it looks like a normal book. You
yeah,
open it up and it's like a whole new world. Oh
right?
my gosh.
Yeah.
Matthew, you have to go down the same rabbit hole.
I do. I do. But for
Yeah.
listeners, so give us
Yeah.
a brief explanation of what an altered book is.
So the way I mean, a lot of people who are artists use them as kind of an art journal or as a way to just put expression into it's taking an old book and making it your own. And you can make
Hmm.
it your own through ripping out pages, through adding pages, through sewing the pages together, through adding different images. You can glue things on it. You can cut things out. You can cross things out. So again, for a kid who is used to getting in trouble, to say, "Oh, here's a book. You can cut it up if you want. You can take a black marker and cross
Yes.
all out." And then also the poetry part, like that was a big thing for her. Altered poetry, or there's another word that people use for it sometimes, where you take someone else's language and you cross out enough words, and whatever words are
Mm.
left becomes the poem,
Okay.
right?
Cool. Yeah.
And so if you think
Yeah.
about that from a therapy perspective, you're borrowing language, or even
Yeah.
parenting. Like, part of our job as parents is to, offer language to your child as a way to kind of help them start to develop that. I mean, are you sad? You're not sad? Oh, are you frustrated? Maybe you're frustrated. You're not frustrated. How are you feeling? Yeah. And that
Mm-mm-mm.
is the developmental model of it. I'm not going to do that, with a teenage girl. Instead, we're going to take, someone else's words and borrow them and change them and cross them out. And books are natural containers. That's the other reason I love to use them in therapy. Like you
They
said,
are, oddly
the
enough.
cover,
Yeah.
hey, there's a
Hmm.
cover. You can close it. If you're overwhelmed, you just put it away.
Yeah.
Um, and that idea of let's take it out of here, like, and let's put it somewhere else for a while, give you a
Yeah.
little break. And maybe you'll want it back at some point. It's yours. You could take it again. But it also just for a moment, I think there's a relief or a release that can happen in doing that
Hmm.
work. Yeah.
And the metaphor is really salient in that you did mention that she had a history of self-harm
Yeah.
around cutting. And here she is asking you for an X-Acto knife, to
Yeah.
which you accept so she can
Yes.
essentially mutilate a book, right? But in a
Exactly.
creative
Right,
way.
in a creative way.
Yeah.
And permission, right? She's not going to get in trouble for that. Not with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
moment, when she's like, I don't even know if she said, "Can I have the exact knife?" She probably just like went through a drawer and found it or something. But she saw, going back to that, like really that small moment of attunement. I know that she saw that look on my face. That was kind of a
Oh.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, should we do that?" And man, just like that, she's like, "You don't trust me."
Oh, wow.
Well, what did you say?
Wow.
Do you remember what you
Um,
said?
so she said, "You don't trust me." And I said, something, it's years ago now at this point, but I was like, "I want to trust you. And if you tell me that we can do this, I'm going to sit right next to you and let's do it. Let's do it."
Nice.
As my
Nice.
heart, because you're like, "Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
God, imagine as a clinician." Um,
Oh,
but I trusted her. And I think that piece too, I think she knew that. She knew
Mm.
that not only did I like her, but I trusted her.
Mm.
So
And there's the attunement. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's
About
atonement.
that, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Very interesting.
That's
Okay, so
joy, isn't it?
let's get into Oscar. Oscar, I think, was the youngest, wasn't he, of your
Yes,
of your
yes.
of your clients. So what can you share about Oscar's case?
So I think the piece that I don't think I have in the article is that Oscar also had older parents.
Okay.
I think his mom gave birth 42, 43 maybe. So more common I think now to some
Yeah.
people,
Mm.
but um so Oscar dealt with not only having parents who weren't from the States, and Oscar was born in New York, but also had parents who were older. So I think that disconnect for him felt even greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his parents were both academics, professors, teachers who, what we would always say is we're really comfortable being up here in their head, and not so
Yeah.
comfortable being down here, and so that
Yeah.
was pretty
Very much so.
quickly, it kind of became, and then the screen time, that's also a big one, right? Like, which I hear, I mean, I could start clocking the number of times I hear, my kid's on their screen all the time. Like, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll usually ask
Is
them,
it
like, how
even a complaint anymore? I
I
think it's more of a
know
description of
it's just
a
a kind
statement
of
of fact.
right. And I'll usually ask
Uh,
parents, "How about you? Are
yeah.
you okay?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I am all the time too." I'm like, "Okay, well, it's a description, yeah."
Yeah.
But for him, I think what was so fascinating is really, the invitation on his part for me to join him in this virtual world. And I love technology. I think it's so amazing. I think it's actually, like, even therapeutically, I think there's a lot of play that can happen in that
Mhm.
space.
Mm.
But so when parents tell me that their kids are on a line all the time, like, I'm like, well, what are they doing? Like, what are they doing online?
Right.
Um, and so Oscar would enter this, like, fictional virtual world. And it was a high school. It was a program called Roblox, which
Yeah. Very
really
popular with kids
common. Yeah,
nowadays.
very
Yeah.
popular.
Mhm.
And within Roblox, there are, I don't know how many hundreds of games.
Yeah. Communities and so on.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And his favorite was this high school. So he would created his own avatar, and would go in and basically, again, that idea of rehearsal, like rehearsed going to high school. Except he could also fly, because
You know,
because
who
that's just
wouldn't
fun.
if you had the chance?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think a big part of the work was really inviting his parents to join that too, you know,
Hmm.
and get a
Yeah.
sense that your kid is basically escaping reality because reality doesn't feel comfortable enough, secure enough.
Mm.
It
Hmm.
felt safe. I
Hmm.
don't like, he did not feel safe, but again, I don't think he felt seen by his parents. I don't think he felt understood. And they
Mm.
Hmm.
loved, I mean, all these kids are so loved, which is great. Like, that, again, that foundation's there, but it's that different level of attunement.
Mm.
And I think he thought they were weird. Like, I think he thought his cousins were so much older. Like, he really did not have that connection. And they
Yes.
were local, like no one was around in
Yeah.
New York. And so he felt isolated.
Mm.
So that piece, I think, with them was, again, really thinking about, this nuclear family of three, like, that's what he's got. And certainly,
That's what he's got.
in Germany, then you have the extended family, and when you head over here, you got all these other people, and that's great, and they all love him. But when he's in New York, like, that's what he comes home to. And so
Yeah.
how can we shift that so that that actually feels exciting, and that feels welcoming, and that feels
Hmm.
playful? Right?
Hmm.
So I feel
Hmm.
like that was a big part of what I hope I offered them in that space.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I found
So
it
in this
very
case, it wasn't about introducing new ways to play for Oscar to play and create. It was actually to invite, like Oscar was already playing, right?
Yeah.
It was to
Yeah.
invite others to play with it, and in this case, his parents to
Parents.
play with
Yeah.
him. Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
a very different approach than for
Yeah.
let's say for Mila, you know?
That's right. That's right. And I think Oscar's parents also, at times, I think they didn't know what to make of me, as they were maybe 5 or 10 years older than I am.
Right.
And I think there was definitely a disconnect initially of, like, why are you being so silly? Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of like the wacky therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I also realized quickly, I was like, "Ooh, I have to actually meet with them without this kid. Like, so I can show them this other part of me, right, the academic too, who can talk this other
But to
talk, and
put the
and also
doctor out.
right,
That's
and give
cool.
them language, right,
Mm.
about what are we doing? We're not, that idea of you're just playing.
Yeah.
And whenever
Yeah.
someone said that, I was like, we are just playing.
Yeah.
Like, it's not
Yeah.
important. It's not like just playing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
I get
so
the
serious
same. So
game.
sorry, I just need to add. I've heard. So you're just talking.
Yeah, yeah. You're just like
That's all you do
No,
for a living? You
I
just
said,
talk?
no, we're talking.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
How
yeah, yeah.
great is that? What?
Humans tend to insert that little word just in front of everything. And
Right.
it's so heavy in terms of like it's an attitude marker, right? It
Yeah.
colors the next word after this.
Yes.
You know, oh, it's just this. You don't need
Right.
to say the just. We're playing.
It
Yeah,
works
yeah, yeah.
without the word.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Hmm.
Fascinating. And so what was the outcome of that? So did his parents did they enjoy playing? What came out of that?
I think they did in the ways that they could,
In the ways that
and
they could.
and
Yeah.
I didn't get too into their childhood or their histories or but they really they showed up and in some ways they were able to really be an audience member to his play in an active way, not,
Hmm.
you know, that idea of playing when I talk with parents about it, it's like you want to play with your kids in a way that really follows their lead, that child-centered way. And if you can't
Yeah.
get to the ground, that's okay. Just don't pick up your phone. You
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
say like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's interesting, and authentic, not put on. But so we did an award ceremony with Oscar and I still remember like his father. I hadn't seen his father smile until that moment. And he's
Wow.
again, very stoic man,
Yeah.
but could join the joy in that moment
Yeah.
with his son, who
Yeah.
was taking such pride in delivering these awards to his family. Um,
Yeah.
and I think again, in some ways, it's such a small moment, but it was such a moment of connection. And I
Yeah.
know
And an attunement, as you say. Yeah.
attunement. That's
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
Oh.
Hmm.
Thanks
Fascinating.
so much for sharing your
Yeah.
faces. Very
Yeah.
different art therapeutic approaches, all three of them, and three very different kids.
Yeah.
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 These very
Yeah.
different kids.
And that was like the thread, and then there's so many more now that have this piece also of just of being a TCK, and what is that like? Like, what is that experience? And again, it's one that I can't ever, I can't, it wasn't my experience, so I don't have language around that. But I always say, even as a clinician, even if I did, I wouldn't know what it was like for you. And that's where the
Yeah.
curiosity comes in.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So how do you think we could translate this, so these notions of self-expression through art, play, and creativity as a preventive measure for expat families, for
Yeah,
TCK?
yeah. I think there's a lot of ways to use play to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know many kids that actually want to have a conversation, for a couple hours with their parents about all the logistics of what's going to happen. Da, da, da. And again,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work for parents. So you know, pick and choose the times that you feel like you can do this. But, is there a way to introduce, oh, we're going to relocate, or hey, we're going back, to this place, or I know you didn't really like it here, but dad's job is like taking us back. So we're going to, and how, again, if you have that in you as a parent and can think about what that would look like, hey, let's like, who do you want to be today? Like, let's pick a character, or I know, let's pretend that we are, sometimes you think about like distance, like animals are really great. Let's be a group of animals and we're all moving. Where should we move? I don't know. Where do you want to go? The jungle? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let's all move to the jungle. What do you think we need to bring? And to bring it in that kind of way. And again, these are, obviously developmental, like you're not going to get your 15
Yes.
year old to do this, but to really start to think about how can these concepts or these conversations, um, how can we help prepare kids through what is their natural way of being in the world?
Hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. I'm thinking about something as simple as just draw, you know, draw your
Yes.
feel, like draw what this move means to you, and not that it has to be a formal, recognizable drawing. It just could just be squiggly lines and yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And then as a parent, what would it be like to collect those every time your child leaves? And then when
Right.
they go to university, to have those all and say, hey, and some kids don't want to look, but if you ever want to look at this, this is the history of,
Yeah.
I remember these moments that we had to talk to you
Yeah.
about. relocating, or I remember these moments when we had to talk to you about leaving your friends.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what you
Mm-hmm.
create. Right, here it is.
Right. Fascinating. I got this insight while you were talking. And so I invite listeners who have entrepreneurship. Somebody, please design a TCK board game that introduces young players to what it's like to be like people who are about to set out, on a posting or something, where you have a little character and then there are tasks where you have to fit in at school, and then things happen along the way. Or you could simulate it as part of a website, let's say, or a card game, where you have different situations.
And you can buy,
Anybody
I love
who's yeah.
as an entrepreneur, yeah, you can buy blank board games. Like it's just the
Oh,
board, right? And it
Oh, well,
folds up
there you go.
into a square, so you can unfold it and even within your family, like, oh, what's our game? Is it going to be the game of life? Is it going to be the game of, you know, adventure? Or, I'm going to come up with 6 question cards and you come up with 6 question cards.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh my God.
That would
That
be really
might be a
interesting.
collective project here.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Well, I've got enough projects on the table, but somebody in the community,
Let someone else take
I'm
that one.
sure.
That's
Yeah,
up for
Yeah,
grabs.
yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Which leads me to wonder, like, so it's been wonderful talking to you, Kristen, and thank you so much for all your stories and insights and your openness towards TCKs and your playfulness as well in this conversation. If listeners and viewers want to know more
Yeah.
about how they could bring more play, more art, more creativity in their own lives and their families' lives, where would you point them? Where are there any books? Are there any resources? Is there a person that's the play person, that wrote the book on it? Where would you recommend they start? There's probably a million ways, a million
So many ways.
pathways, but where would
Yeah.
you recommend they
Yeah.
start? Or should they buy supplies? Like, what should they do?
They should play. Um, I really love my master's degree, like I said, is in drama therapy. And I think the creative arts therapies are just so they're different organizations. There's drama therapy, art therapy, music therapy, dance therapy, poetry therapy, narrative therapy. And most of those have an organization, a national organization, and most of those websites have just a list and list and list of things. Pinterest is a great place to look for creative ideas as
Yes,
well.
indeed.
But I brought it over here because this is does it come up backwards if I
A
hold it up like
child's
No,
work.
a child's
Yeah, I
work.
see it
Yeah.
correctly. The Importance of Fantasy Play by Vivian Gusson Paley.
this book? It's so simple. I mean, each chapter is maybe 3 or 4 pages,
Mhm.
and it is one of the most beautiful descriptions of how children play and why they should.
Wow,
Um,
cool.
and
Hmm.
she talks about a 9/11 moment, and I have one too that do we have time to just share this real
Sure,
quick?
sure. Please do.
Okay.
Yeah, please do.
One of the things that I remember, I was in the city working at the hospital that was closest to the towers over 9/11,
Oh, wow.
and I was on an inpatient child and adolescent unit. And I wrote about this in another paper where, the kids used to play, they would play with Superman and, Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and all of this fantasy play. Um, and then, I mean, it was literally like this, 9/11, 2 days later, the kid said, "Do you have any firemen? Do you have any police officer toys?"
Suddenly the heroes change.
Heroes
Fascinating.
changed. And what
Yeah,
they wanted to do was stack boxes
right.
and knock them over. Right? And
Yeah,
and there was no language around 9/11, what had happened, the bill, like none of that. We didn't need it. But what the kids needed was access to the right material so that they could try to start to understand what had happened. Right?
Mhm. Mhm.
wow.
Fascinating. And she describes these moments where kids are just figuring out the world in the way that they do best, like through their play.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
great.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So that's
Play,
those.
play, play as is a form of simulation in a sense. It's a
Yeah.
safe
Yeah.
simulation of
Yeah.
what could be very difficult
That's right.
dangerous things.
That's right. Yes, and she
Fascinating.
actually leans into that idea of dangerous play.
Yes, yes, yes. On the margins of, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And
Fascinating.
and it's
So,
usually the adults who get nervous about it. Like the kids are like, this isn't like I'm just playing.
Yeah.
Duh.
right.
We're not in danger. Like it's play. The adults are like, oh no.
So this is a first you would recommend listeners. This
Oh
is not
yeah. I love
a
this.
heavy academic, well, like this is, you know,
This is read
understandable.
it, read, 3 or 4 pages and then go to sleep and you'll get a whole lot.
Mm.
Right. Cool.
It's
So
digest.
maybe that's one door
Yeah.
listeners can go through as the first door on the pathway. So we'll put that link to that resource.
Thank you.
Kristin, it's been fantastic. Thank you
Oh,
so much for coming on the podcast. Again, we really wanted to have you on because the paper was fascinating, and it's also a very different paper.
Mm.
We and case reviews are really important because there's the theory and there's what statistics tell us and so on. But then there's people on the ground saying, well, here's what I'm seeing.
yeah.
And everybody has a piece of that puzzle. And I
Yeah.
find that sometimes in science, we tend to, put a lot of emphasis on the detached, cold, quantitative, and we forget that this stuff is happening, you know, in therapeutical rooms, in people's offices, and so that's very important.
Mm.
Andrea, you opened the thing, so any last words before we
What just
any
came
last
to mind when
question?
you ended your speech was Kristin does through her paper we learned that she is doing a great job with translating all the theory into
Hmm.
into art, which I find fascinating. I mean, kids, adolescents, when they're guided the right way, I think they enjoy art. And
Yeah.
when you make it so personal as you have done with the 3 cases you've shared with us, that's just brilliant. I'm sure they remember you forever.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh,
That's a
and this
gift.
I just what stuck with me from your paper also was this the girl with the altered book. She left the book with you, right? Is it still with you?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
heartwarming.
Yeah.
It's in a safe
That's
place.
cool.
It's in a
That's
safe
right.
place. Yeah.
Yep. Thank
I
you.
wonder if she'll come back one day and ask to see it.
I would welcome that. I would love that. And it will be here if she does. Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Open
Yeah.
invitation. All right. Kristin,
Thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much.
Kristin.
Thank you
Thanks for
so much
joining
for
us.
coming along. And thanks to all viewers and listeners. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to this episode of the TCK Research Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. Please subscribe, like, and share our podcast and leave us a review. It really helps others find us. If you have any questions or comments, please write to us at tckresearchpod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we promise we'll answer all emails. We wish you a good day wherever you are, and we hope you'll join us again for the next episode.